car behind us beeped. I look in the rearview mirror. 4 guys jumped out of the car with weapons, smashed the window, about to attack my wife. My duty is to protect my missus, of course. The car behind them, another 4 men jumped out as well. So I was effectively fighting 8 men. The last thing I remember was I was lying down on Parramatta Road, flat on my face in a pool of blood. A semi-trailer drove past my face, and that woke me up. Right?
Jeez.
My nose was over here, my eyeball was hanging out. I had like 60 or 70 holes in my body.
Bang, welcome back to the #1 podcast in the world. Thank you guys for smashing the subscribe button. I know you're probably wondering, why am I looking at a black screen right now? Well, the reality is I want you to look deep into your eyes in that little black mirror of yours. And I want you to ask yourself, have I subscribed yet? And if not, why not? We're the #1 podcast family on YouTube, and we are here to dominate. So please smash the subscribe button. It goes a long way. So to begin this off, I want to start you off with a quote from the amazing Kai Green, a famous international bodybuilder who really set the scene for bodybuilding in Australia, internationally rather. Bodybuilding is an art. Your body is the canvas, weights are your brush, and nutrition is your paint. We all have the ability to turn ourselves into a portrait and into a masterpiece. Now look, anyone who competes knows that there is no such thing as perfection in bodybuilding particularly. However, if there's anyone that comes close to perfection, it has to be Jeff Myth. Jeff Myth, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thank you, Lucas. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, buddy. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of your content. I love what you're doing. So just for a bit of background, you were the 3-time Mr. New South Wales.
Actually, 2-time Mr. New South Wales.
2-time Mr. New South Wales.
1-time Australasian Champion. That was probably the biggest competition I won.
Mm-hmm.
And before I competed in IFBB, I won a INBA title and an ANB title.
Wow.
So 5 titles total.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Thank you, my friend.
You live up to the name.
Thank you.
And also, of course, the CEO and owner of Gold's Gym over in North Sydney. Correct. So it is a pleasure to have you here, man. Just off the bat, I have to say, you look so strikingly like Andrew Tate. Like, surely you guys are related.
No, we're definitely not related. But like I said to you before when we spoke off camera, I take that as a compliment. Thank you. To me, he's a great guy, and I love his content. So
yeah, I have to agree with you. He's a very polarizing and tricky figure, but I think in terms of putting forward masculine energy, and particularly in a time right now where being a man is often something that's shunned upon. You know, there's Absolutely. Terms thrown around like toxic masculinity, and there's a very strong kind of push to prevent men for really being the purest form of themselves. Having a figure like Andrew Tate, well, like anything, I think Andrew is more of a byproduct of that culture, because there is such a push for strong masculine energy that an Andrew Tate was just bound to appear at one point or another.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. Masculinity, in my opinion, has been shunned upon in such a bad light in probably the past 20 to 30 years, in my experience. Men are they're no longer glorified into being men. They're shamed for having a presence, a character, and it's something that I feel the tables are turning right now in the world. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I mean, Tate is an absolute
top G.
He is. Well, you know, he's really he's brought it back into, and the word's not fashion. He's opened up people's eyes, and he's reminded people about what we need in society. So
yeah, kind of like alluding back to the conversation we're talking about off camera, it seems as though, pardon me, the modern system is kind of gamed in a way that you're going to put everyone into very static, still jobs that require for the most part, minimal mental focus and just are based on repetition, right? And it's just repetitive over and over and over again. You're doing the same thing, you're filling out the same forms, you're doing the same paperwork, answering to the same boss, and there's no variety, there's no interest. And if you look at our biology as human beings and where we came from an evolutionary standpoint, we were at one point hunters and gatherers, and would be out there in the wild killing elk for meat and go on 3-4 day hunting trips just to provide for the family. And there was constant tension. So I think a lot of that quote unquote toxic masculine energy is innately just embedded into the DNA of what it is to be a hunter. And it's most prominently males, but you definitely do see it in females as well. Like there's some badass women out there that are out there hunting or fighting in MMA cages or bodybuilding, but it's most prominently in men. And when you put those instincts into an environment where they aren't allowed to thrive because it's shunned upon, because socially it's not considered acceptable, then there's that tension.
But I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, what I could add to that is, like I said, I believe the tables are turning. It's in our innate nature to be men. Of course, we have to control our instincts. You can't walk around chopping people's heads off, like 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. But at the end of the day, that's how things were solved. Of course, we have to abide by rules and regulations. But I think the regulations have been designed in a way to control masculinity, because at the end of the day, the true source of masculinity is power. I think there's certain systems out there that want to have all the power and keep people asleep in a way. So people can't fight back. People pay their bills on time. People pay their taxes, and 50, 60 years down the line, you get your superannuation and you roll over and you pay for your grave and you die. And that creates a system that's just completely, how can I explain this? That's just, people have lived their life, they've done their duties, and they've got no pleasure out of life.
Yeah. Or I think maybe, I don't know if pleasure is the right word, because I think for a lot of people in a modern day context, pleasure is what they seek. They seek out, short-term gains, whether that be in food or whether that be in sex or whether that be in money. People look for pleasure. But what we're really seeing a lack of in society right now is fulfillment. I feel like no one's fulfilled. No one's found a purpose and a mission and an underlying statement as to why they're here. And when you do find individuals like that, you record a podcast with them, of course, but beyond that, you find so much meaning and message and purpose. And it almost acts as fuel, right? Because when you see Arnold Schwarzenegger on stage flexing these crazy biceps that no one has ever accomplished during that time period and has hit this level of symmetry and this level of athletic perfection, or as close to it as you can get, people look at that and go, wow, that's what's possible for a human being. And I think that's what's really lacking right now, that drive for fulfillment. I think pleasure is all around you. It's on your phone. It's on your laptop. It's in the food you eat. It's in what you drink. There's temptations for pleasure everywhere.
Look, there's different ways you can define pleasure. I mean, you can get pleasure out of suffering, which is how I define pleasure. I chose to suffer for a long period of time, and when I say suffer, it's suffer for the right reasons, which means I grinded. I did jobs that I didn't want to do when I was younger, when I was 18, 17, 18, 19, 20, all through my 20s. Obviously, I saved my money, and some days I would work for 3 days in a row and not sleep. I had 2 or 3 side hustles, and that had to stop. I got into a bit of an accident, which we can elaborate on later. I'm happy to share that with you. And so I started training. Fortunately enough, when we go back to masculinity, and I'm probably one of the luckiest guys in the world to have a father like I had. So my father's name is Jamil, and he is a person of extreme power in his character. I mean, if you meet him, he lights up a room when you meet him. He can be extremely charming and he can be extremely intimidating. He hangs out a lot in the gym. The members love him. He's 80 years old now. I can flick you a picture of him later. I'd love you to.
I saw a couple photos on Facebook.
So he's in amazing shape. He's 80 years old, and that's my inspiration. And I mean, the inheritance he passed on to me was pure wisdom. And the wisdom that he gave me, my father was a master, and still is, because he's still alive, a master of psychological warfare. So when they escaped the war in Palestine, they migrated to Jordan in the late 40s, right? So they grew up in Jordan, being a Christian background. It was a Muslim-dominated country, and they went through a lot of prejudice. And he went through a lot of hardship that not many men could endure. I mean,
what kind of hardship are we talking about?
well, he was the type that his integrity and his honor meant the world to him, and if it meant he had to fight, he would. And there was many situations where he did. He's a hero. But the stories that he told me were such stories of knowledge and power that he passed them through to me, and I had to utilize these in modern day. So of course we can't go around, like I said, walking around and getting into altercations all the time, but it was more the power of human nature, the laws of human nature, if you want to call it, understanding people's true intentions, understanding how people react, and that's probably been the number one thing that served me in my life, because, you know, we live in Australia, and unfortunately Australia is a racist country in my opinion. It's a beautiful country. You know, I consider myself Australian. I was born in Australia. However, there is prejudice all the time. And if I didn't have these tools that my father told me and taught me, I don't think I would have been able to survive. That's the honest truth. The other thing he's taught me was work ethic. I really, really put a lot of effort into, like I said, I suffered a lot in my early teens, in my early 20s. I sacrificed a lot of partying, and I trained a lot. When I was 18, I left school. I was an apprentice builder. I was doing it as an apprenticeship in bricklaying in Granville TAFE, and the goal was to continue and become a builder. I was also working for a building company as an apprentice. Make a long story short, this was a large turning point in my life which led me back into fitness. My girlfriend at the time was picking me up, and we were on Parramatta Road. We were at a traffic light. Traffic light went red. We were in an area where we couldn't move forward. Anyway, car behind us beeped. I look in the rearview mirror. 4 guys jumped out of the car with weapons. It was a complete random attack. Mind you, my dad put me in a martial arts gym since I was 4 years old. So my goal in life was to be a professional fighter. That was all I could do. That's all I could think about. I was extremely good at it. And I did that all the way at a high level. I wasn't professional, but at a high level, amateur level. I competed. I won several titles. In Muay Thai was my style. And I did that all the way up until I was probably 20 years of age. I still do it now, but I just do it privately, just for myself. Fast forward, at the traffic lights, 4 guys jump out of the car, walk around to my girlfriend's side, smash the window, about to attack my girlfriend at the time. Obviously, I jump out. My duty is to protect my missus, of course. Fight these 4 men. I got injured quite badly. They got injured quite badly. They had baseball bats. And the car behind them, another 4 men jumped out as well. So I was effectively fighting 8 men. And this brawl, look, I've been in my fair share of fights. I'm not going to deny that. But this brawl went along Parramatta Road across 6 lanes in peak hour traffic at 3:30 in the afternoon. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been into a fight, but a 1-minute fight feels like an hour.
Yeah.
This probably went on for about 5 or 6 minutes. I got injured pretty badly. I blacked out. The last thing I remember was I was lying down on Parramatta Road, flat on my face in a pool of blood. A semi-trailer drove past my face, and that woke me up. It was like a second wind, or it was like an energy source that just made my body spring up off the asphalt. obviously.
Or your body probably going, holy fuck, there's a truck right next to me.
Some type of adrenaline rush. I will never forget when I felt the wind of the tire of the semi-trailer drive past my nose. Right?
Jesus.
So that was like a second wind, and I literally just springed up off the floor. Literally, my nose was over here, my eyeball was hanging out. I had like 60 or 70 holes in my body. Like
holes?
I had holes. Well,
why did you have
one
holes
of the
in your
weapons they
body?
had was an L-shaped spanner, a tire. So it had quite a large, a wheel nut on the end, and they were hacking me with that.
Oh my God.
So
there was intent not just to hurt you, but to kill you. Like that was the intention.
If it was somebody else, they would have died. I guarantee that. If it was someone that was physically weaker or didn't have the martial arts or the self-defense training that I had, 100% they would have died. I was on the verge of that. It was just by chance I was able to defend myself to the point where I wasn't able to get killed. Passed out, jumped in the car. I just said, take me to the hospital. Went to the hospital, passed out in the hospital.
How was she reacting to all of this?
She was hysteric. I mean, it was something that you never want your girlfriend to witness.
Of course not.
She's probably still traumatized to it about it. If I bring it up, she walks away. We don't speak about it. And to me, it's an experience, a negative experience at the time. But when I look back now, it showed me what I'm capable of.
Did you get any like scar tissue or any residual effects from it, like broken bones?
Yeah, I broke several bones, cracked my skull. I had a 1.5 inch laceration on my eyeball. I had a hemorrhage.
On your eyeball?
I was blind for 3 months, so I had a hemorrhage on my optic nerve because I got hit quite severely right in my eyeball.
So just for the people who aren't aware, hemorrhage on your optic nerve literally means that it detached. Is that right?
It didn't detach. It's behind the eyeball. Obviously, there's your optic nerve that connects to the eyeball.
Mm-hmm. That's like the wiring from your brain to your eyeball, correct? Yeah.
And it was hemorrhaging, and they couldn't stop the hemorrhaging. So effectively, my eyeball was bleeding. It was gushing blood. So I needed to go to the hospital every week, and they'd suction my eyeball, pull it out of my skull, clean it.
Your eyeball out of your skull?
Yeah, like not completely. They've got this special machine where you put your head into it. It's a little device. It opens up your eye. They put some medication in that inflates your eyeball. It's like a little suction cap. They pop it on your eyeball. They pull it out as much as they possibly can. They get.
You're not conscious, right?
Clean it. No, you're conscious.
What?
Yeah, you're conscious.
You were conscious while your eye was essentially out of your skull?
Yeah, you're conscious.
Ooh, what is that like?
It's extremely uncomfortable, but I mean, it's got to be done. I really refused for it to be done because it was such an uncomfortable feeling. But
could you describe it? Like,
yeah, I mean, your head is locked into like a cage. Your chin's clamped, so obviously you can't move. It's quite critical, and then they've got these special eye drops that dilate your eyes, and this machine they're like, you can't blink. They've got, another small clamp that kind of opens up your eyelids. It's like a suction. They suction it on your eyeball. Doesn't completely pull it out of your head, like it's not over here, but it pulls it out enough so they can get behind it and clean it. They just couldn't stop the hemorrhaging for a few months, and then it resolved itself, and got my eyesight back.
Wow.
Back to 2020, thank God. And but broke my nose, fractured my skull, broke a bunch of ribs. Yeah, I was a mess. For me, I kind of stopped working after that.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I stopped working out of anger. I was very angry. I was 19 years old.
Did you ever find out who the perpetrators of this were?
I actually, one of the guys, excuse me, dropped his wallet as he was getting into the car, leaving the scene. And I said I was on the floor in a pool of blood, and I saw that he dropped his wallet, and I crawled over and I took his wallet. So I had all of his name, his information, his license, his ID, gave that to the police, and so the police said to me, do you want to press charges? If you do, you need to identify these people face to face. You have no protection. So I chose not to, and I chose to let it go because I kind of did my research, and I really didn't want this to escalate for my family. So I did it for my family, my parents. I've got nephews and nieces and sisters. So I just kind of let it go. I did it for my own protection.
Wow, that must have been a really tough pill to swallow.
It was, and that's what fueled my anger, because I couldn't do anything about it. To be honest, the police really didn't care that much, in my opinion. So I was like, it is what it is. You have to learn from it, and that's what made me want to hit the gym really, really hard. I needed to train. I trained my whole life. I trained with my father my whole life. And at that point in time, I had neglected my training because I was working. I was trying to etch my way into the world. I was trying to become a builder and be successful, and I had no time for the gym. And I was traveling from the northern suburbs all the way to Granville, TAFE. So it was a bit of a trek for me. So I had no energy to go to the gym. I was laying bricks 10 hours a day. I was working as an apprentice builder with a company, and I was studying as well. So I just I scrapped all that, and I said, I need to train. So I just went back to the gym, started training, and I never looked back. And all that anger that I had, and I was angry because it's not because I put myself in that situation. I actually didn't put myself in the situation. It was a complete random attack, and this shit does happen in life, and that's why you have to be. My philosophy has always been, my dad's always taught, just never ever let your guard down. Always try and perceive the world in the most realistic fashion you possibly can. You never judge a book by its cover. You never know what someone's thinking. So went back to the gym, and I just trained. I trained and I trained and I trained, and I just channeled that anger and that frustration because, of course, I started to have nightmares. I started to have trauma. I wanted to find these people. I wanted to get back at them. I wanted revenge. But there was, to me, that was a...
Considering your father's background, particularly everything that he had going on in... Did you say it was in Palestine? Is in Palestine?
So they grew up in Jordan.
In Jordan.
And they came to Australia in 1971.
Okay. So considering all the conflict that he went through in Jordan, was he able to offer any kind of insight in processing that information? Like, was he able to say, hey, look, I've been in this situation and I got it through this way? How did you deal with that? Did he offer any kind of avenues for you?
To be honest, not really. I understood that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was proud that I defended myself. He never raised me to be a coward. He always did instill power in me. And that's why he did enroll me in martial arts from such a young age. Yeah. He understood that, we're different, and they're going to come for me one day, whoever it is, people, enemies, haters, the system, companies. So I don't think he shuns away from violence. He doesn't shun away from violence. He doesn't endorse it, but he's taught me how to be violent. Your dad is like, and I say this as respectfully as possible, your dad is straight out of a comic book. Like, he really is a superhero. I mean, I'm going to put up a photo right there just so people can kind of get a gauge on him. But how old did you say he is now? So he just turned 80 years old. He just turned 80 years old, and he looks like the complete opposite of what you'd expect an 80-year-old to look like. You expect an 80-year-old to look derelict and with a bad back and frail and on medication and with a cane or a wheelchair. He is killing it. He looks exceptional. He's in better shape than most of the people that I know. He looks like he's full of energy and he's just ready to take on life at 80 years old. It's remarkable. He's got a very strong mindset, and that's he always told me, you can control anything with your mind. So going back to that night, I woke up at 1 a.m. in the hospital, had wires all over me. Doctors woke me up. I think I was in a very mild coma. So it was 3:30 in the afternoon, didn't wake up till 1 a.m. I freaked out simply because I didn't want to tell my dad. I was more scared of his reaction than me getting better in the hospital. And I was more worried for my mum seeing me in the state that I was, because I looked awful, right? So I discharged myself. The doctor said, you're crazy, you can't go. My girlfriend was like, you have to stay. 19 years old. I was, full of fire. I didn't really understand how to control the rage back then, so I just pulled everything off me, all the wires, and I went home, opened the door. I said, Mum, I'm fine. Don't look at me. She's like, where have you been? Like, don't look at me. Don't look at me. Went into my room, didn't turn the light on, called Dad, explained the scenario. Look, I've called my dad in every single violent interaction I've been in my life. I've told him the story, and he's just processed it and just understood that he knows that I know what to do. So, next morning, told Mum, I was like, I'm fine. I wasn't really fine, but you got to do that, man. I just didn't want my mum to worry. So
Yeah.
that was my main concern. I was just stressing that my mum would, freak out.
Yeah.
But look, it changed my life. It
Of
changed
course.
my life because I'm not a bricklayer. I'm a gym owner. I have other businesses that I run now, and I'm still proud of myself, man, because I protected my girlfriend.
So you found a way of channeling this horrible freak incident that you were in and turning that into the fuel and the drive and almost the engine that propelled you into these new heights of your bodybuilding career. And I'm curious to know, like, what was that first day in the gym like where you're still processing everything that had just happened to you, and suddenly you just find yourself under a bench press or under a squat rack, or you're on the row machine and you're just trying to get rid of all this inbuilt anger and this frustration and this pain that you're going through?
Yeah. So training wasn't something new to me. I just had stopped for a couple of years because I needed to focus on my career. I always trained with Dad. Since I was 5 years old, we had a bench press, we had dumbbells. He was my hero, and he still is. So, going back to the gym felt really good in a way, but it felt like, right, so you're at the gym, I didn't know what a personal trainer was back then. They weren't very popular. It was a while back. So I just said, look, I'm just going to train because I need to feel better. I need to feel that this anger needs to be directed into something. I had a lot of anger and I had a lot of frustration. To me, at that point, I had lost my career. I couldn't go back to work. I was too traumatized to go back to work. I didn't want to travel that route anymore, all the way to Granville. And I was in no physical shape to be able to work. So,
Did you say you were bricklaying?
I was bricklaying, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, God.
bricklaying. Yeah.
Fuck no.
Yeah, it's a difficult job as it is. I mean, winter morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, it's hard.
One of my best friends is a bricklayer.
Summer.
And he's always in pain.
Yeah.
He's always in pain.
It's awful. Yeah, I mean, my back was screwed and I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So, look.
All right, guys, we need to stop for a second because I want to ask you something. Do you know what the number one regret is for a human being? It's not betting on themselves. It's not taking a chance, and it's not chasing that dream that you often see discussed on this show. And do you know what the number one reason as to why people don't do that? It's because of money. But if there's anything I want you to take away from this podcast, it's that you can go and chase your dreams. You can travel the world. You can start the next Fortune 500 company. That's why I'm super excited to announce that I've partnered with Monarch Financial Group. Monarch Financial Group are a team of mortgage brokers who are absolutely committed to making sure you get access to the money that you need and the education that you need. They've got teams of mortgage brokers with over 10 years of industry experience. And that experience goes towards fighting tooth and nail to make sure that you get the best deal possible. So it's time to stop procrastinating on that dream. It's time to go to monarchfinancialgroup.com.au. Make sure to mention Luca's podcast in the process.
So I was like, if this can happen at any time of the day, I started to get paranoid. This can happen anytime. So I actually need to prepare myself physically and mentally and be stronger than what I was, because I started to blame myself. I was like, well, if I was a better fighter, I was pretty good. If I was stronger, if I was bigger, maybe I wouldn't have had so much damage done to my body.
Are you innately harsh on yourself? Like, are you innately super critical and always pushing against yourself? Because the reality is, and I don't care what your name is, whether you're Conor McGregor, whether you're Kamaru Usman, or whether you're Jeff Myth, 8 people with baseball bats and wrenches and knives, there's no chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm not saying I'm Bruce Lee and I took all these guys out.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hacked like a kangaroo on the side of the road, right? And, there was a divine power that helped me through it as well. I mean, no human body can.
Yeah. So to bring it back to the question, do you think you're innately harsh on yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest critic on myself. And I think everyone should be. I think it's especially as a man, it's your duty to be super critical about your personality and how you're perceived in the world. And I think it's a sign of maturity when you think, if you've made everyone makes mistakes. So if you've made a wrong mistake, if you've made a bad move, I started to say to myself, maybe I shouldn't have got out of the car, but I had to get out of the car. So that's the other side of my brain telling me you had to get out of the car. You had to protect your wife. That's your masculine duty. You had to protect her. So I was willing to sacrifice myself for her because she's in my care, right? She's a lady. She's a girl. She can't protect herself. And her parents have entrusted me to protect her. So there is no way in the world that I would let anything happen to her. And if it means my life's at risk, then so be it. As long as she's okay, and that's fine.
So you're building back your strength. You're in the gym. You've got
building back my strength. I'm in the gym. I'm feeling better. My body's responding, right? My body's really, really responding. We're genetically gifted. And when you show the photo of my father, you'll know what I mean at that age. So my body's responding. A couple of years go by, and I start working at a supplement store because I was right into my health right now. But my dad's like, my girlfriend at the time, she's like, like, what are you going to do? You can't just train forever. I'm like, I need to just get strong, and I believe that when I do get strong, I'll understand what I need to do. I need to get very, very strong. So they just let me be. My best friend at the time, who was my training partner as well, he's like, I'm going to become a personal trainer. Do you want to do it with me? Let's do the course together. I was like, no, man. The last thing, we went to school together. So I was like, no, man, the last thing I want to do is go back to the classroom. I hated it at the time. He's like, no, it'll be fun. It's only 3 months. We can charge whatever we want. I was like, oh, as soon as I heard that, I was like, really? What a personal trainer's charge? It's like $100, $120 an hour. I was like, are you joking? I was like, let's go. So we did the course. It was great. It was really fun. I mean, for me at that point in time, going back and socializing and being in a classroom was very, very difficult. I'm not that type of guy. I struggle with that type of thing. So it was very hard, but it was kind of like a new lease on life for me. So great, graduated, got my personal training degree. I was training at a Fitness First back then. Applied for a job. I just saw all these personal trainers, always busy, always have business. Any personal trainer that works in the drawer, they give them a job. I was like, great, I'll work there too. It's my local gym. I was friends with everybody in the gym. Everybody was always asking me, Jeff, can you train me? I was like, sure, when I get my degree. I got rejected. I was like, how come? They're like, you don't fit the culture. I was like,
what?
Correct. So this was Fitness First St. Leonard's. I was very determined back then. So I found that really unjust. So I applied for the job again. I was like, listen, whatever I need to change, my training style or my attitude, my haircut, whatever it is. And I didn't look like this back then. I was a pretty boy. I was clean shaven, long hair. I was a lot lighter, beautiful physique. I did part-time modeling as well. I'll send you a few pictures. They were like, no, sorry. So the personal trainers that worked there, they felt intimidated by me. That was the excuse. So this is the story of my life, intimidation. Everybody always says I'm intimidating, and it always works against me. And you can't change who you are. You can't change your DNA. You can't change your character. It's not something that I'm trying to do. It's just who I am. And it works for me sometimes, and it does work against me sometimes. So the third time I was like, no, fuck this. Sorry, can I say that?
You can say whatever you want.
I was like, fuck this, man. If this fat piece of shit can wear a personal training uniform and he doesn't know what he's doing, I definitely can do it. Walked into the office of the manager, pretty much just kicked the door in. I was like, listen, man, if you are a man, look at me in the eyes. Give me a fucking chance. I will work for free. Give me a chance. And I guarantee you, it'll be one of the best moves you've ever done. For some reason, he turned. He was convinced. He gave me a job. My first week of personal training, I had 45 paid sessions at $140 an hour. So 44 hours times $140. I also sold 10, 20 packs to other customers. I came home with, I remember, $13,000 my first week, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was the most money I've ever had at that point in my life. I was only 22 years old, probably your age, maybe a tad younger, right? So I was like, wow. And honestly, from then on, that next year, I think I made way over six figures. I was making at least $5,000 to $6,000 regularly a week.
What was the manager's reaction to that first week?
So he congratulated me. He actually gave me an award. He said he pulled and I remember this day, he pulled all the personal trainers into the studio. We had a weekly meeting and he said, let's all congratulate Jeff. He's broken the Fitness First record of paid sessions ever that a personal trainer has had in his first week. Obviously the trainers weren't happy about that. But he really started to take a great liking towards me. He watched me from a distance every day, and he really found a deep respect for me, because honestly, all I wanted to do was train people. It genuinely wasn't for the money for me, because I never envisioned I would make that type of money as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I loved training, and I love training people. I genuinely.
What do you think was your X factor that let you exceed at such an exponential rate that no one else had tapped into? Was it your sales pitch? Was it the way you looked? Was it your charisma? Like, what separated you from everyone else?
That's a good question. What separated me from everyone else was what the personal trainers hated and what everybody else loved. It was my work ethic. So everybody in the gym would see me train 2 hours a day, twice a day, no matter what. And they would watch me train. And it wasn't that I just trained. I would train with such drive and such ferocity that people wanted that. They wanted that energy. I had an energy in me. And when I look back now, I can't train like that anymore. I still train very, very hard. I never skip training. I train every single day for 2 hours a day. But when I think back how I used to train when I was 20, it's like I was possessed. And that's where Jeff Myth started to arise. People started to say, you're like a myth. It's not real. And that name literally just stuck to me. You're not real. You're something out of a mythological character.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my body was actually changing dramatically.
I can imagine 2 hours a day, twice a day. Like, just on that training regimen for a second, it is very extreme. It's the same regimen that a professional athlete would be taking when they're going to compete for a World Cup, or when they're going to compete for a massive footy final or something like that. Like, that is a very intense form of training. Was there any time for recovery? Was there any time where you would taper off or slow down, or was it just every day, 2 hours a day, twice a day, 7 days a week?
In all honesty, some sessions were 3 hours. and now that I'm an expert, I know that can be counterproductive.
Yes.
I understand that physiologically.
Because there is a point of diminishing returns.
100%. But at the age of 22, you have healing abilities like a superhero, right? And for me, the psychology is more important. Being able to put yourself through that every single day. For me, it wasn't suffering. For me, it was bliss. It was heaven. It was pleasure. It was the strongest I felt. I never wanted to feel like I did that day when I got attacked. So I just kept going. Body kept responding. And so what happened was personal trainers ganged up against me and started writing false allegations. They had no business, right? I was killing it. I was doing 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You know, I was making $6,000, $7,000 when I was 22 years old a week. They had no business. The business that they had, it all came to me. And I had integrity when I was a PT, and I still teach this to my own PTs. I had other clients of other PTs come up to me and say, Jeff, I don't want to train with so-and-so. I don't want to train with Tony. I don't want to train with Miriam. I want to train with you. And I was like, listen, that's not my style. I'm not someone that's going to poach somebody. It's just not me. What you need to do is you need to explain that to your personal trainer, get their permission and their blessing, then I'm happy to train you. I'm happy to train you. I'm an expert, and I'm not going to shun anyone away that wants to learn. But you need to get their blessing first. I'm not a nasty person. I don't want to cause any rivalry in the gym. So I guess that worked against me because they kept losing business and I kept gaining their business. It got to the point where I had a 1 year waiting list. I literally couldn't take on anyone else. So then what happened, all of these false allegations went to head office.
Such as?
Aggressive, intimidating. My clients are scared of him. His training methods are going to injure people. They're unorthodox. And this is trainers that...
So just in-office bullshit, like just bitching at the water fountain.
Yeah, he didn't wear his uniform properly, things like that. But it was constant. Honest to God, one of the complaints was he parked in a no stopping. Like these guys were watching me all the time. Like if they spent that time watching me on their business, they would have had just as much as business. Fitness First St. Leonard's had 11,000 members at that time. There's plenty of business for anybody. If you've got enough confidence and self-esteem in yourself as a fitness professional or whatever you do, there's no point in time where you should struggle. There is 11,000 members and there is a niche for everybody.
I can understand that mentality. I don't adopt it myself because I don't believe in that famine mentality, but I see it so often where jealousy just fuels people's behavior, and it's almost like they sense that internally they don't have the self-esteem, the confidence, whatever the attribute that they're jealous of, they don't have that and they see it in someone else. And it hurts them when they see it in someone else because they know that's what I could be. But to actually go and say that publicly or to internalize that in a real deep underlying way is so painful for a lot of people. So they much rather just shoot you down as opposed to build themselves.
It's not that they look at you and they say, that's what I could be. They don't think that. They know they can't be that. But I know they can be that because everybody can create their own confidence. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you create.
Absolutely.
It's a tool that you can learn. Yes, some people are born with it. Some people have the gift of the gab. Some people have that natural light, that charisma.
I'm very curious just on that thought, whether that's a natural, just genetic situation where you're just born with confidence or whether that's like those very early fundamental years where your mind is being shaped by your parents and you're mimicking a lot of their behavior.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
And the part where it's passed on to you biologically, you are what you are. Your DNA is your blueprint, right? That's why there's some people that are just born stars effortlessly. Right?
Yeah.
Elvis Presley, like
Michael Jackson.
Correct.
Yeah.
They just have it. End of story. It's the X factor. But it's definitely something you can learn. It's also a form of programming. We're all programmed to some point in time, as well. I was watching my father. My father he's a superhero to me.
Yeah.
And he's a figure of confidence. He took pride in the way he looked. He took pride in the way he combed his hair and his just the way he carried himself. A lot of people were jealous of him. But I guess that I mimicked that and I did it subconsciously. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely like that learned behavior, particularly when you're so young and so you have so much neuroplasticity in your brain. So it's so much easier for you to adopt new behaviors. That's why for children, it's so much easier to learn new languages.
He never sat me down and said, son, this is how you have to conduct yourself, son, etc., etc. I just picked it up.
He led by example.
He led by example and he did it on purpose, but he wouldn't say it linguistically. He would just say it with his tones. It would just be one look at me, or it would just like I knew if I did something that was out of line, it would just be a glimmer in his eye. And we could just communicate, and we still do. We literally communicate telepathically. He just looks at me and I understand exactly what he's saying. So yeah, anyway, personal trainers conspired against me. I got fired, right? Saving up to buy a house, my first property, which I did buy. At that age, at the age of 22, the manager pulled me aside before I got fired and he said, Jeff, listen to me. And his name was Dennis. I'll never forget it. He goes, there's no way around this. You are going to get fired. Head office have already told me. Now, I am getting transferred to North Sydney Fitness First, Walker Street. Your only chance to continue working in the company is if I vouch for you and take you with me. And this is the guy that didn't want to hire me.
Yeah.
Right? I said, well, it's the only choice I've got, right? He's like, correct. So I took the offer and I transferred to North Sydney. North Sydney Walker Street still is to this day, excuse me, the biggest shithole gym in every single Fitness First, right? St. Leonard's was a gorgeous club. It was beautiful. It's still pretty good. It's not as good as
11,000 members.
it's nowhere near as good as Gold's or Sydney now, but back in the day, it was a really, really elite club.
Yeah.
It's clean. They had a lot of equipment. It was great. It's massive. So I walk into North Sydney with a stand. I've never been there, and it's 2 minutes away. And mate, there's mold on the carpet. Like 6 or 7 personal trainers in thongs. They weren't wearing the uniform. They're like in singlet and thongs and boardies. I was like, what the fuck is this? And like, I was like, always had my hair done nice. I had cologne on. My uniform was ironed. Like, I genuinely took pride in my uniform. I actually loved the Fitness First uniform. It was beautiful. It looked great. So I was like, wow. The club was dead. The club was, I think, one of the lowest performing clubs in New South Wales. Membership-wise, client retention-wise, even all the personal trainers were struggling. There was 1 or 2 guys that had a decent amount of clients, but the rest were struggling. And there was no work ethic there. It's like I was surrounded by a bunch of PTs that just wanted to fool around. That's literally how it was. And like I said, I find it really hard to be around people like that.
So when you walk into an environment like that and you're set in this situation where you're seeing so much chaos and so much complacency and so much just inability to take action and disorganization, do you go into that situation and go, oh, I can be the stellar example that's going to change the culture? Or do you look at that and go, what the fuck is this shit? Like, how do you walk into a new situation like that, given the origin of where you came from?
Well, I mean, all the clients that I had at St. Leonard's didn't follow me, and it wasn't personal. It was just out of their way. Yeah. And you should never expect that. I mean, I think 1 or 2 followed me, but I had over 150 clients, literally. So I had to start from scratch, and I had to adapt. I mean, what other choice do you have? You either sink or you swim. So the first thing I realized is I can't charge $140 an hour anymore. No trainer would charge that in North Sydney, even though North Sydney is a rich area. So the club was beaten down. So I reduced my rate back down to $100 an hour. And I tried my best to sell and to prospect, and it just wasn't working out for quite a while. So I just decided to just continue training and just kind of pull away a little bit and just let the members come to me. So I just started training really, really intensely every day. I didn't focus on my business. I focused on myself once again. That always worked for me. Stopping, bringing everything back internally to me and focusing on myself is literally what's always worked for me. So I just started training really hard again. Really, really hard, making results, making gains, showing work ethic. The trainers were like really shocked. They're like, wow, what a strange guy. Like he comes to the gym on his Harley, I had a Harley back then. You know, he's muscular, he's prim, he's proper, he's kind of intimidating. They weren't sure how to handle me, and that worked to my advantage always, because that's just my character. And then I started to attract. You always attract the kind of niche that you actually are. Like, if you're X, you're going to attract X type of clients. So I started to attract kind of the managers, the CEOs of the companies, because they were like, I want to train with this guy. I don't want to train with a guy wearing thongs
and board shorts.
I want to train with this guy. So I just stayed true to myself, and then I just built my business up slowly. The culture of the club got better. The trainers got better, and I believe I was one reason of that. They had to compete. I mean, it's a competitive environment. The world's competitive, and the same thing would have happened. I would have taken all of their business if they didn't level up. And they did. We actually became friends, and we all started to train together. And then Walker Street, North Sydney Fitness First, became a culture. It actually became very famous. We all trained together at 10 a.m. every single day, and we would just completely tear the place apart. It became a spectacle. People would come and just watch us train. We'd take over half the gym, and they'd just watch us train. And it was very inspiring to people. I mean, we had bodybuilders, we had powerlifters, we had people. All the trainers started getting better. Their businesses started to build, and the club's profile got better. So, that's that. So I worked there for approximately 8 to 9 years. 2016, I was prepping for the last competition that I did. and I'll flick you a picture of that. And,
Right.
Yeah, I was halfway through my prep. A new manager started 8 weeks in. You don't really see the managers. You walk in, you do your clients, and you leave. You pay your rent, you do whatever you need to do. And he's pulled me aside and he said, Jeff, can you step into my office? I said, yeah, sure. And he's just pushed over an envelope to me without speaking. And I've said, what's this? So I've opened up the envelope and I'll never forget this sentence. And it said, you do not fit. And it was just, honestly, it was just deja vu. You do not fit the culture of our club and you may tarnish our reputation in the future. So the same thing had happened to me, right? I had so much business. New trainers had come in. They had no business. I mean, these are trainers fresh out of college. These are people that, I want a career change. I want to be a PT. I want to charge $100 an hour. You don't just make $100 an hour. You have to fucking earn that shit. Do you know what, you actually have to be somebody to earn that shit. You can't just demand $100 an hour. You have to show value for that. So I was gutted. I had massive responsibilities. I had mortgages, and it was something that I worked so hard for, and they took it away from me. So yeah, took the weekend off. Of course, I was extremely upset, and I said,
Do you think that decision to axe you, considering you had developed and were a key member in the culture change of that gym and you developed a very extensive clientele, do you think that was purely based off other PTs saying, hey, we're not getting enough slice of the pie, or do you think it was racially motivated?
It was antagonized by all the new PTs. It wasn't my friends, groups, because there was only about 6 or 7 PTs when I started.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have all these personal training colleges pumping out new trainers, and people think North Sydney and they think rich suburb, gonna kill it being a PT. It's quite the opposite, to be honest. It's actually quite difficult to get clients in North Sydney. And for me, it wasn't, but for them, it was. And it wasn't because it was North Sydney. It's because people in North Sydney that are CEOs, that own companies, they're intelligent. They know what's good and they know what's not good. If they're going to train with someone, they're going to pay them $100 an hour. They want the best.
Yeah.
And I was the best. So they just these trainers, they had no experience. I had been training since I was 5 years old. So it's in my blood. It's my life. It's my passion. Like, these trainers could skip a week of training and not care. Any country that I'd ever been to, any holiday, the first thing I'd ever do was find where the first gym was. I never, ever skipped a day of training, ever. I mean, it was part of my discipline. Like, if I skipped a day of training, I was miserable. You're not going to like me if I skip a day of training. You're just not going to like me. So, took the weekend off. I was like, well, what am I going to do? I've got, a couple of $1 million worth of properties that I've got to pay off, mortgages. So I came up with an idea. I was like, well, what if I just open up the best gym in Australia? And I went back to the time where I competed in the Arnold Classic in 2013. I came 10th in the world there, represented the country. I qualified when I won Australasia in 2012. And I trained for a month in the original Gold Venice. My sister at the time, who was a green card holder and an American citizen, she hooked me up in Gold's Gym, and I trained with all the legends there. Like, I trained with Robbie Robinson, I trained with Dexter Jackson. It was an amazing experience.
How exclusive is Gold's?
It's very exclusive. I would say it's the most exclusive, prestigious brand in fitness in the world. I mean, we have over 800 clubs worldwide, and there's some mega clubs out there. There's some clubs that have cost $50 million. Like, they are huge clubs. Like, some memberships are like $500 US. Like, Gold's Gym in Egypt, in Cairo, is $500 a month. It's like, it's a big deal to go to Gold's Gym, not in Australia. I mean, it is here now. It's starting to grow, slightly, but overseas it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, they just opened up a brand new one. I think it's
well,
just
when you
12 months.
see the pedigree of athlete that has come out of Gold's Gym across the last 30, 40, 50 years, you can understand why there is so much prestige to the name, because it's where the best of the world train. It's, it's like training jiu-jitsu at a Gracie gym, just known specifically for that
Yeah, correct.
So you have the experience of training at this Gold's Gym among some of the best in the world.
I just fell in love with it. I honestly fell in love with it, and I actually considered moving to the US. And so at that point, I was at a crossroads. I was like, do I become a professional bodybuilder? Because the last competition that I came third in, which was 2016, that was a pro qualifier. So I nearly turned pro.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I can push again next year, and I know who my competition is going to be. I'm very confident I can win. I'm very confident I can make the adjustments I need to in my physique to turn pro. Obviously, I'm going to move to the States. I want to be around the professionals, and the next goal will be the best in the world, which is Olympia, to compete with the best in the world. But yeah, no, I chose not to do that because I found that bodybuilding is a sport where it's too risky, and I predicted that.
How so?
Well, to the level where I needed to be competitive, let's say in the top 10, there'd be a certain amount of supplements that I wasn't prepared to take, and comes huge health risks with that. So I didn't truly want to sacrifice my my life, my youth. So I competed in the natural federations at the start, 100% natural, and I decided to try IFBB, and then my first IFBB show I actually won when I was natural, right?
Which is remarkably difficult.
Yeah. Look, I was small. I was like 70 kilos, but I still won, right? I mean, it was my shape. I looked a lot bigger than what I was, and again, I'll flick you that picture. You can show that if you like. I was a clean physique, man. It was a really clean physique, and nobody had known who I was. Nobody prepped me, and so yeah.
What do you attribute that success to? Because for most people, a bodybuilding competition whilst on steroids, whilst on performance-enhancing drugs is extremely difficult. And it's very much down to a science with the amount of supplements you're taking, your calories in, your calories out, the exact amount of steps you're taking, the exact weight that you're lifting. It's a process of 365 days just so that on that one day you can look particularly at your absolute best. So why do you think you were able to hit that level of success even though you weren't taking steroids or performance-enhancing drugs?
Look, firstly, steroids are not what people think they are, right? They are not a magic wand. They'll never turn you into a champion, right? There's so many people that are on steroids these days and you wouldn't even know they are. So, and these are not high-level athletes. These are regular day-to-day people, regular gym goers. So the perception that steroids will turn you into a champion is incorrect. What turns you into a champion is your work ethic, right? And your acknowledgement and being able to understand what your capabilities are, right? And also understanding your genetic makeup. I mean, I can't go and play NBA. I'm 5'11". How can I play NBA? I'm just under 5'11". So there's absolutely no competition for me there.
This might be my most controversial opinion I've given to date. No one cares. You're not the number one podcast. Keep saying we're on a mission. You only got 60 views in 2 days. 3, 2, 1. Bang, welcome back to Hemp Canned Labs, a proud sponsor of Luca's podcast. These guys have an entire range of CBD oils, gummies, and vapes for you smokers out there that specifically is designed to provide you with high quality CBD. So whether you're trying to deal with stress, anxiety, muscle recovery, or you just enjoy that relaxation effect that comes with CBD. I use it personally before every podcast. It helps deal with all the stress and anxiety that comes in with recording these episodes. And if you use promo code LUCA, you're going to get 15% off your next purchase. Check out their website. The link will be in the bio, in the description, wherever you're watching this, you will be able to find it. Thank you, and back to the program. So let's shift gears a little bit, right? So you've obviously had a very successful bodybuilding career. You've competed on the international stage. Yep. You've rubbed shoulders with some of the best in the world. At what point did you go, okay, I'm done as an athlete and I'm ready to take over as a business owner now?
Sure, that's a great question. So in all honest truth, what I started to notice in the bodybuilding community was judges were training competitors, That doesn't happen in the States. Now, Phil Heath told me that with his own mouth. I mean, I was sponsored by Phil Heath. So 2015, Gifted Nutrition sponsored me. Me and Phil became close mates. We still are close mates till this day. And we went to a bodybuilding competition once, me and him in Australia. And he was like, does that coach, is he the judge? I was like, yeah. He was like, how is that legal? I'm like, look, this is a massive controversy in Australia. He goes, that doesn't happen in the States.
That's the biggest conflict of interest.
So what I started to notice was all of the judges, athletes were winning. And some of them looked great and some of them honestly didn't deserve to win. So I was like, you know what, this is corrupt. It's not about the best physique anymore. It's about, the judge. It just turned into a business.
The politics.
It just turned into a business. So all of these athletes, it was becoming popular. It was like 500 bikini girls, all of these guys getting prepped by one guy that was a judge, or a girl that was a judge.
Yeah.
And they'd always win. And I was like, this is bullshit. Why am I going to waste my time? I'm still going to continue to train. I'll always love training. I'll train for the rest of my life. But fuck this. I'd rather just get rich. Seriously.
Well, it is difficult to sustain 3% body fat for a very long period of time anyway. It's much easier to count your dollars in that sense as opposed to be so intense. I know we're going to talk about the business, but I do want to bring it back to the body fat because I did want to bring this up earlier.
Go for
so
it.
You put up a video a while ago where you hit this insane level of...
Right, fuck, it's not real life.
body fat percentage. And for a reference point at home, the average male generally at a healthy level will sit at around 15 to 20% body fat. That's generally speaking what's considered a healthy range of body fat. And as you decrease the percentages, it's not like 1% is just 1%. It exponentially gets harder and harder the lower you go. So the difference between 4% and 3% is not the same as 20 and 19. What was your process in getting to, was it 3% body fat? Was that right?
3.5%.
3.5%.
So the way I could prove that was I did a DEXA scan, and it was my regular guy where I always would be scanned because I needed the most accurate analysis. And he said to me, Jeff, guess what you are? And I said, I'm 3.5%. He goes, that's impossible. That's impossible. I said, okay. So we did the scan and it came back at 6%. And he said, that's ridiculous. He goes, now when I minus your brain fat, because your brain is out of fat, he goes, it comes down to 3.5%. He goes, you are actually 3.5% body fat. He goes, you are the leanest person I've ever scanned. And he still uses that image of me because it spits out an image to all of his customers. He's like, this is what 3.5% looks like. It's like the whole thing's just solid blue.
Jesus Christ.
It's difficult, man. It's difficult.
What's that? Firstly, that cannot be good for you in the slightest of ways. I mean, when you're getting down to those percentages, like you kind of alluded to before, your brain is highly composed of a lot of fats and lipids, and it requires a lot of omegas to function properly. So I can imagine reducing yourself to such an extreme level of body fat would have had a lot of toll on your mental.
I wouldn't say mental, because I think you're in control with your mental power. So that was something I was always really good at. However, it's got a lot of side effects on your physiology, which means like you forget stuff. Yeah.
So when I say mental, that's what I was referring to. Apologies. Yeah.
You mumble, you stumble. You kind of see things sometimes. You have very mild hallucinations sometimes. And this is in the last couple of weeks, really. And you forget a lot of stuff. And you're very low in energy. However, I think I was a very unique bodybuilder because I actually enjoyed dieting quite a lot. The best I ever functioned when I was dieting. I see a lot of bodybuilders and in the industry and come into the gym, and even guys till this day, they're like, oh, I'm in prep, and they're just moping around and It's like, mate, why are you moping around? You chose to do this.
Yeah.
You should be happy. You should be enjoying this. I used to bounce off the walls. The last 2 weeks were the hardest. Of course, you're starving. I was a bad sleeper, so I could never sleep. And my routine was, 4 a.m. wake up, cardio, till 5 a.m., come back and eat like 40 grams of rolled oats and, a handful of blueberries. But I was super pedantic. Like I would weigh my blueberries. Like I've got videos of me weighing my blueberries. Like I'm completely OCD freak when it comes to that stuff. And it's a pure science. And so yeah, it was it's willpower. Willpower is what crosses you over. And I was still working 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, for me, the hardest part was standing up because there was no fat left on the bottom of my foot. It felt like my foot was a bone, and it was just agony. And to be honest, I don't think I ever recovered from that because it's very hard to grow back fat on your feet, your fat pad.
I don't think I've ever even considered growing fat on my feet.
Well, there's a fat pad at the bottom of your foot. And when your body fat is that low, your body's just going to take fat from wherever it is. So yeah, that's painful.
Yeah,
that's very painful.
Bet.
Yeah.
I bet. And the reverse diet on that as well would be exceptionally difficult, I can imagine, right? Like
it's very difficult.
The feeling of like, man, I was able to hit 3.5%, and just the psychology of it, going back to 5 and thinking, oh no, what's going on? But realizing that 3.5% is just not realistic in the slightest.
Yeah, and the deprivation of food. I mean, you go back and you start picking out. Of course, I got better and I started to control the type of food that I was eating after competitions, but it's a celebration after a competition. A lot of people, they go out, they pig out, but that's probably the most dangerous part. Your blood pressure goes up. You start to retain a lot of water. Excuse me. And you can put like 15 kg on in like 2 days, that's a lot of stress on the body. I think I put on 15 kg once in about 3 or 4 days. And you look incredible because you're still lean, right?
Yeah.
Your muscles are full. Like they are so full.
Yeah.
And you put on a lot of water and you look amazing. It's perfect for a photo shoot, but it's not healthy at all.
Yeah.
And you're sweating rivers and you're just,
Okay, so we're going to circle back now to what we were originally talking about, was the corruption and the politics that you noticed in the Australian bodybuilding circuit, particularly with judges, coaching athletes. And you said that was almost the tipping point at which you decided to look for avenues of making money but still in the same industry.
Definitely.
And
that was definitely the tipping point. I was like, fuck this. No one's ever prepped me. At certain competitions, in my opinion, I was judged unfairly where I should have won. And it was the competitor that didn't look as good that won. That was, his coach was a judge. So I was like, this is bullshit. So I just let it go.
Yeah.
The competitive part, I just let it go. I really don't care because I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now.
And so where does Golds enter this? Like at this time while you're competing, have you already kind of opened the North Sydney gym, or was that later on?
Yeah. So going back, fitness first, they told me I don't fit the culture of the club and I may tarnish their reputation. They were literally the exact words they said. I mean, that was like a slap in the face after, help build that club. So, I was like, it's sink or swim now. So I risked everything. And in 8 months, I opened up Golds. 8 months, I opened up Golds. And it's 1 kilometre away from North Sydney Fitness First. And, they tried everything to restrict my trade. They tried everything to, help me, not help me in any way, shape or form. And I succeeded. And 8 months later, Gold's Gym North Sydney was born. And the majority of my clients followed me. And that was a massive driving factor for me. Again, that was a testament to my character and my personality. And even my dad at that point, he said, like, you can't do this. And that resonated with me. And he just said that out of protection because, we're talking about a $4.5 million gym, not $500,000.
You took on a massive financial burden, and as far as I'm aware, you had a lot of involvement from everything from the design to the gym to the layout. Like, Correct, Golds were very good in giving you the freedom to really make this North Sydney gym yours? And how important was that to you?
Yeah, look, the main goal for Gold US was, as long as it's, large, it's got the best of the best, and, it's luxurious, then we're okay. So, I sketched it out. I did all the architecture with, obviously, the architect. I did all the internal designs and sent over it. They were like, wow, that's amazing. So proved it. Gold's Gym North Sydney was open June 17th, 2017. Left fitness first November 3rd, 2016. And nobody believed it. Nobody believed it. I still stayed in the area. So I had a bit of this is probably a bit strange if I tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. What I did was I went every single day to the same cafe that I went to when I worked at North Sydney Walker Street, and it was exactly next door to Fitness First. And I worked from there every single day. And I saw all the managers every day. I saw all the PTs every day. And my utter silence and just sitting there and just working on my laptop, it was so intimidating to them, because the word got around. I'd see friends every day. Jeff, what are you going to do now? You left. We heard the story. That's bullshit. What are you going to do? I was like, just wait and see. I'm gonna announce it very soon. So the word got around that I'm going to open up the best gym in Australia. Nobody believed me. I was like, if you don't believe me, just wait and see. This is how much it's costing. They were like, no way. Like, that's bullshit. Where are you going to fund that from? I was like, just wait and see. And gym was opened June 17th, 2017. Funnily enough, I had a lot of PTs that asked for a job at my gym that left Fitness First and came to start work for me. Obviously, I rejected them. Even the manager that fired me sent me an email like 3 months later asking me if he could have a tour of the gym. Obviously, didn't allow him on the premises. He simply said, look, I just want to come have a look and I want to see what your membership rates are. I was like, mate, are you kidding me? I was like,
yeah, do you want to go into our books as well? Like, what are we doing here? Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Exactly. So yeah, man, it's all been good from there.
Yeah. So I imagine it was just like lights on, instant success, right? No hiccups along the way.
Plenty of hiccups, man. Plenty of hiccups. I mean, there's no such thing as instant success. Success comes from suffering. That's what I've learned. And success comes from being able to withstand a fuckload of pressure and a fuckload of stress. Yes, at the point I'm like, yep, gonna open up the gym and just gotta be a millionaire instantly, because how can it go wrong? Mate, everything goes wrong. Everything that you couldn't imagine goes wrong. Everything gets fired at you when you least expect it. You get scammed, you get robbed, interest rates go up, landlords are a pain in the ass, people don't pay their bills. So there's a lot of obstacles to overcome from opening up a business. But again, it's a testament to the character that you are. Then, obviously COVID hit. That was difficult, extremely difficult. I had to get through COVID. COVID hit again, had to get through that. But yeah.
Did you employ a specific strategy during COVID?
I did. So my strategy was, there's a kink in the system right now. And it's a perfect opportunity to attack the system back, because the system's weak. There's a problem with the system now. So I found a few loopholes, I analyzed, and I found a couple of amazing opportunities. Can't mention what they are, but it catapulted me. And yeah.
And I imagine a lot of those opportunities are what were able to keep Gold's Gym a business today. Because it catapulted the business. Yeah.
I'm not going to say it was going to keep it, because it was never going anywhere. There's too much determination, too much love, too much passion. And it was still going well, still going very well.
But there was a very long period of time where gyms couldn't even be open.
That's right. So yeah, those 2 lockdowns, they were awful. Like, we had hundreds of members leave overnight, not because they wanted to, because they had to.
Yeah.
People,
they're not going to pay for a gym membership if they can't even get into the gym.
They lost their job. They're working from home. People, they weren't even living in North Sydney. Their contracts got cancelled. People, So there's really nothing you could do. It's just you had to ride the wave, and it was hard. It's hard when you get 500 cancellations overnight.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Worked well.
And so moving forward, I mean, I see it now that you're very engaged in social media and you put out a lot of content and kind of expose gym hacks and gym tips and gym myths, if you will. Is that the angle you're kind of approaching now, that you're seeing yourself in the role of the face of the company now, so you have to be exposed and creating lots of content? Like, what's the intent behind?
So you know, for quite a while, I didn't really want to be the face of the gym. That's in all honesty. And it wasn't a lack of confidence. It was just, I think, a bit of a fear factor of the experiences that I've been through. And I just didn't want to go through, I didn't want my image to affect the gym. And then when I started to realize was people come to this gym, yes, because it's great. It's absolutely, you know, a premium facility, but they come because of me. That's the truth. And I actually had to accept that. I didn't accept that for a very long time. I was like, no, it's nothing got to do with me. I was really kind of trying to stay away and stay away from the limelight. But I guess I had that much experience in the industry and that much knowledge in the gym. People were always asking me questions and stories. And I was like, you know what? People do look up to me and I need to capitalize on that. I need to show people that I appreciate their feedback. And I need to you know, level up and be the leader that I am and take charge of my company. Even though it's a franchise, even though it's Gold's Gym, it's still my company. I created it, I owned it, and I built it myself. So that's helped dramatically, and people appreciate it. I get feedback every day. I mean, I get random phone calls saying, Jeff, you know, we saw your TikTok and, you know, we saw your Instagram. That's a really cool tip. You know, I'm using that tip. Thank you. It's helped. So yeah, that means a lot to me.
And it's very concise and short and easy. I mean, if you, we're going to leave links in the description for people to kind of see all your social medias and stuff. But if they want to kind of just quickly get there, like, what's the easiest way to do so?
So TikTok, we're Gold's Gym North Sydney. If you want to add me on my personal page, it's Jeff Myth, and our Instagram is Gold's Gym North Sydney.
Beautiful. Listen, man, we're having to wrap up soon. But I just want to know if you've got any advice for a young 18-year-old kid who's kind of confused in life, trying to figure out balancing masculinity with being a human being, with trying to achieve their dreams, but also don't want to disappoint their parents, or just finding turmoil. What advice would you give to them?
Probably sacrifice pleasure for pain. So put yourself in situations where you know you're going to suffer. Take on the hard jobs in your early 20s. Try, you know, everyone tells you that your 20s is made for you to party and to go out and get drunk. I highly disagree with that. I mean, if you do that, you're 30 before you know it. You're a brokey and you're 30 and you're still stuck in the same loop, right? What I did and what worked for me, and I literally encourage all of the young boys to do it these days, and they're getting smarter, is sacrifice that pleasure, that temporary pleasure. Put yourself through hell. Become a man of character, become a man of strength. You know, learn a few skills and get very, very good at them. If you need to sell pillows, for example, to get to where you want to be, you need to sell pillows now. Forget about following your dreams and following your passions. You can follow that later when you're rich. Sell whatever you need to sell. But the most important thing is being able to sell yourself. Become somebody of character, a strong presence, strong character, and sell that, and people will come to you.
And if I might just add to that, I think, although you did kind of touch on there, I think the importance of communication is so important for especially young people. It's because you might be technically on a level one of the best in the world at what you do, but if you can only communicate that at a level 3 or a 4, people are only ever going to perceive you as a 3 or 4. So just as much as you must have the technical background and the skill and the competency and the character to do what you say you can do, you also need to have the ability to communicate.
You need to be able to sell it. So
exactly.
Sales skills, persuasion skills, and I'm not saying be a scam or be a crook, but be able to articulate your skill. So get very, very good at your skill. Do it 10,000 times.
Absolutely.
Become a master at your skill. Then communicate it to a way that it's so effortless. It's so easy to explain. that you become invaluable.
Exactly. And like you said, you know, you have to have the technical skill, because if you're a 10 at communicating, but if you're a 3 at your technical skill, you become a sleazy salesman.
Exactly.
You know, trying to sell used cars that have the dial wound all the way back and are missing a front tire. So
Absolutely.
you need to be able to have both.
Correct.
Jeff, you're a testament to both competency and technical skill and your ability to communicate it. Your character is admirable. I'm so glad we did this podcast. I'm extremely glad to be able to share this stage with you, and I wish you nothing but the best, but you don't need that from me. I mean, you already know you're going to get it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Lucas.
Anytime. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in on that episode. If you haven't already, I mean, what are you doing? Smash the subscribe button, destroy it, and we will see you next time.